Hello, hello. My name is Tara Harvey with True North Intercultural. And today I want to talk to you about some of the things I have learned over the past 3+ years in teaching an online program called Facilitating Intercultural Learning. So Facilitating Intercultural Learning is a 12-week virtual program for higher education faculty and staff who want to learn how to develop their own intercultural competence as well as improve their capacity to facilitate others' intercultural learning. And I've been teaching this now since 2017. Currently, I think we're in the 8th cohort. We do this in a 12-week cohorts of small groups of educators. And the reason I want to talk to you about this is because I work with folks who work in and around international education. And we're in the midst of the coronavirus right now. It's about mid-May 2020. And we've gotten to the point where we've moved everything, most of our teaching online, and we're no longer just kind of trying to get by doing the online things that we need to get by, but I'm working with more and more educators who are now thinking intentionally toward the future about how they might develop online programs to support intercultural learning in the absence of international educational exchange, and hopefully in the future to complement the intercultural experiences that their students are having off campus as well as on campus. So I realize I have perhaps more experience than most teaching intercultural learning online. Prior to teaching this program or leading this program, I had several other experiences facilitating intercultural learning for both students and higher education professionals. So I want to talk about some of the lessons I've learned over the course of this journey in case you might find them useful. So the first thing I want to point out is that the online platform has benefits. I was skeptical when I was first kind of forced into a situation where I had to facilitate intercultural learning online many years ago. And one of my prior work experiences where we had resident staff around the world, and I had been providing intercultural coaching one-on-one, but it was no longer enough. I couldn't do that for everyone I had to do that for, but we also couldn't get all the people from around the world together in one place. So we had to do it online. And I finally stopped asking, can this be done online? And started asking, how can this be done online in a way that feels good to me? And so I did it, and I realized that there were some great benefits actually to doing this kind of work online. And so I want to, first of all, highlight those. One, you can bring together people from around the world while they're in their context, while they're living their lives, and they're learning together in a deeper way. They're going out and applying that learning and then coming back to the learning space and debriefing and discussing and reflecting on what they're learning and how they're applying it in their own context with other learners. That's not something you can do in a lot of other formats. So that's a great benefit. Second, I don't think we should be approaching online or virtual learning as like a replacement for in-person. We don't need to think about like, okay, how do we shift what we would do in person to an online format? Instead, I think we need to really approach it as a different way. And one of the things I teach in facilitating intercultural learning is that we need to backward design our intercultural curricula, our intercultural programs. So start with the learning objectives. Start by thinking about what is it that I want my participants or my students to learn, to take away, to be able to do, to understand, to know at the end of this program. And then think about, okay, what can I do in this context, in the format we have, given whatever constraints you may have, to help them achieve those objectives? And try not to think about, okay, what would I do in person and how can I do that online? But to instead think creatively and innovatively, because there may be things that given some of the benefits I talked about, that you could do in this format that you couldn't do in an in-person situation. So think about, for example, how you might draw on the experiences that your learners are having in their given context. The next thing I want to point out is that engagement and connection are really, really important. And you need to focus on those and emphasize those and think about them more in the online context than you might in person. They're important in all contexts, but you have to think more intentionally about it when facilitating intercultural learning online. So, for example, in the Facilitating Intercultural Learning program, I want to inspire connection and engagement between the learners and also between learners and myself. So one of the things I do is keep the cohort small, maximum usually around 16 to 18 people. And in much of the learning goes on asynchronously during the week, and then we gather together once a week in a Zoom call to really dive deeper into the materials. And during that time, I will often break people into smaller groups. In Zoom, you can use breakout rooms, and other platforms you can do something similar. And so I will divide the group up into smaller groups of 3 or 4 people to discuss a prompt. And that's an opportunity for them to really connect on a better level with specific others in the program, get to know one another, develop relationships, and share more about their personal experiences in a way that they might not be as comfortable doing in the full cohort. So that's one way that they connect with others in the program. Another way is I strongly encourage them to have accountability partners. They all take the intercultural development inventory, get a plan for working on their own intercultural development, and then I encourage them to partner up with someone else and meet with them once every other week or every 3 weeks to be talking with that other individual about their intercultural learning journey, to be holding each other accountable, and to be supporting one another in that process. So that's 2 of the ways that they engage with one another. And then as far as engaging with me, there's the group call, but then I also want them to have more of a one-on-one relationship with me as well. And that starts in the application call. So everyone who applies for Facilitating Intercultural Learning has the opportunity to get on an application call with me where we really talk about their context, what it is they're trying to achieve, why they're interested in this program. So before they even come in, I feel like I know them to a certain extent, what they're trying to achieve, and they know me, and that helps build trust, which is really important in intercultural learning. And then in addition, as I mentioned, everyone takes the Intercultural Development Inventory, the IDI, and they get a one-on-one debrief with me to discuss their individual results. So that's an hour-long opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation about their own intercultural challenges, strengths, goals, etc. And in addition to all of that, we have like an asynchronous online forum where people can connect via text. And so they're in there in between our coaching calls, sharing with one another, sharing resources, asking for feedback, asking questions. So those are all ways that we try to foster engagement, community, and connection, which is really important in the intercultural learning process. And I would also mention that even the asynchronous aspects in virtual learning can be more engaging. Don't just think about them as putting information out there. So many of the video tutorials in Facilitating Intercultural Learning, for example, are more engaging. It's not just information, but I will ask people to reflect on certain experiences or give them reflection questions to consider. I will actually facilitate an activity through an asynchronous video where I'm sort of walking them through an activity that they're being asked to do. So you can think about how to be engaging in more creative ways than might naturally come to you. Another really important thing I've come to learn is the importance of the flipped classroom. Now, it depends on your context, but this has been really helpful to me in this particular program. So the way facilitating intercultural learning is designed is every week there's a new module, a new theme with new materials that learners can engage with on their own time. Video tutorials, a downloadable PDF that we call field notes, and that's pretty extensive with review of the materials that were covered in the online tutorials, but also activities and reflection questions that really get the learners to dive deeper into the application of the materials and the understanding of the materials in regard to their own life and their context. So it's not just about engaging with the learning online, but in the offline situation with this PDF they've downloaded, really thinking about how to implement and how this connects with and applies to their real life, personal and professional in this context. And then we get together, as I said, once a week. This is in a live format, and that's where we dive deeper. So I don't have to teach, I don't really have to cover content when we're together live. That's been done. But during our time together, which is very precious, I want to be really facilitating their learning on a deeper way, making sure that they understand the concepts, that they can connect them to their personal experiences, answering any questions that they have, providing feedback, and really discussing the things that are most important to them. And so those are some of the key things that I've learned in my own experience facilitating intercultural learning online. And I think basically overall, what this boils down to is we need to be asking better questions, not can I do this online or what's an activity I can do online, but what are the learning objectives? What do I want to achieve? What do I want learners to take away from this experience? And how can I achieve that? Given the context, given the situation, think outside the box. What can I do in this situation that will help the learners, that will help participants achieve what it is that I want them to learn and get out of this experience? So those are my tips. I hope you found this helpful, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.